Hello, everybody. This week we have Neil Gaiman, The Ocean at the End of the Lane. This is my first Neil Gaiman book. I've been on the internet. I've heard a lot about him. I think he's done some stuff in Hollywood. He's written a lot of books. Again, whenever I hear hype on sort of a modern writer, right, I can't help myself. I'm a little hesitant. I've sort of been in this well before, where a writer gets a lot of hype and a lot of times it doesn't hold up. But I'm happy to report Neil Gaiman 100% holds up. Neil Gaiman, go on and you see any of these other reviews of any of his other books that say he's tremendous. They're spot on. No lies detected, people. Man can write. Man can write very well. Thoroughly enjoyed this book. Um, I'm still on the Kindle Unlimited thing. Again, not an ad. I got one of those special offers for like 3 months or something to this effect. So I'm gonna just use it while I have it. And his was one that came up, and I'm like, I know Neil Gaiman. It's here under this subscription thing for a bit. Might as well give it a go. And so give it a go. I did. But having said that, I don't know anything about what the book was about or his writing style in general. I took it 100% sight unseen, right? Oh, spoiler alert and rating. My rating for this book, what do I think? I think it's a 4 out of 5. I think that's what I give it, as a 4 out of 5. I feel like maybe if you're a normie, it might feel kiddish to you. I don't know. Maybe you'd be all right reading it too, but maybe there's not enough there, right? They need normies, right? People who don't read, they need a lot of flash, right? They're like they need a bunch of CG in the movie to get through it. They don't understand the art like we do, right? In any case, it's a solid 4 out of 5. Maybe I'm thinking 4 out of 5 because of replayability, so to speak. I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking it. It's a solid book. It is a solid book. I think if you were into some other genre, if you were into biographies, you know, history of World War II, I think you could take a break from it. Maybe not a break. Maybe don't break the book you're reading, but at the end of the book, come to this one for a little bit, then go back to your subject. I think you'd be all right. I don't think it would ruin your day. It's like a palate cleanser. Yeah. Okay, so we get into it. The preface. Your boy doesn't read a preface. If it's good enough to be in the book, it's good enough to start at chapter 1. That's how I roll. Now, I don't know if the preface told me something that maybe would have given me some kind of a hint, but I didn't read it. So I start with chapter 1. They don't have any names. There's no name to the chapter, which I think ends up working by the end of the book. By the end, it sort of knits it together a little better, because we have a situation where he's not remembering everything. I'll get to it. It's in first person. Now, I am not a fan of first person in general, right? I think I've seen it done perfectly like once or twice maybe. But I've seen a lot of people try it. I don't know why so many people try to do this. I wish they'd just write like normal people. In any case, he went for it. And at first it wasn't, well, let's say it wasn't bad, but I wasn't getting anything good out of it, right? It was just sort of there. Now, it's written from the point of view of a 7-year-old. And what I will say is that as the book goes, maybe he needs a rolling start instead of a dead start, right? He just needed to work his way into it a little. I don't know. I didn't like the start. It just sort of. But once we got going, it was fine. But it's from the point of view of a 7-year-old who likes to read. He starts a birthday party and no one came. It's a little bit sad. But I don't. Again, what he does a lot of times is something will happen, and you might feel sad if that were you, but the character doesn't, so you don't feel that sadness, right? Which is it's how first person is supposed to work. It's supposed to be giving me something from that character, which I guess he checked the box. I do like the part where it says the sister and her friends were there, but only as observers. They didn't participate. I'm like, that's some savagery. That's some sibling savagery right there. I really did like that. He is like, they need a tenant for the upstairs room, which is his room. And when the tenant shows up, they run over his cat. A little bit Debbie Downer. And the tenant again takes his room. So for the kid, it's like, I lost my cat. You're trying to give me this other cat that hates me, and I hate it. But I know I'm not supposed to say anything. But more importantly, not more importantly, but equally importantly is, I lost my cat and I lost my room. Sort of a bad day. Not good. Unfun. We then wake up the next day. It's only the course of maybe 2 or 3 days, but it feels longer. Which again, lends itself to sort of the beauty of the book. Now I know I gave it a 4 out of 5 and I'm sort of crapping on it now, but you gotta wait a second. The cops come, they tell his dad, your car was taken for a joyride by some kids or something, but we found it at the end of the lane. So they go down to the end of the lane. The kid's worried about his comic book and try not to eat his dad's burnt toast because he doesn't like burnt toast. I don't like burnt toast either. It's a separate issue. I'm like, people want to make toast into like charcoal for some reason, And I'm like, why do I want this? This is going to explode the inside of my mouth. It should just be a nice toasted piece of bread. But I should still be able to identify the bread, right? Side issue. Excuse me. Turns out the new tenant is dead inside the car. And so I'm like, oh man, we got a dead guy already in this book. But the kid doesn't take, he describes it like a kid would see it, which is very slick. But the kid's only concerned with his comic book that's in the car, that maybe he can't get the comic book now. They tell him obviously to move to the side, and that's when we're introduced to one Letty Hempstock, who's like, he can come stay at our farm for a bit while y'all do that adult stuff. They agree. We move off to the farm. We get sort of a long description of some cow's milk, which again is the part maybe it's just the part I don't like. That little nugget. But what I think he's doing is pacing. You can't run right into the crazy or your story or whatever, because then you have this elevation in the story, which it needs to carry. So if you pace it, go a little slower to start, when you ramp up, the reader will feel it a lot more, which is what he does here. Well, hold on. We're inside. We have the milk. We're eating good country food. Made me a little hungry. It's the girl's mom, and then what'd they call her? The grandmother. There's 3 hemp stalks in a house. Kids eating real good. And the girl says like they missed the note. He and she gave the reason why he killed himself. And then I'm instantly like, like, how did you know? Right? We just met this dead guy. Cops didn't even know a dead guy was in there, otherwise they wouldn't have brought the kid. And now you know there's a suicide note? I mean, right? And then we sort of keep going, and it feels like it's like if you were driving along and at some point you were on the wrong road, a different road. But in your mind you don't remember when you switched roads. It gives me that kind of feeling. I'm like, something's going on, right? Something peculiar is going on. We then go back to her backyard. It's a farm, backyard, and she's like, I want to show you my ocean. And the kid looks, and he's sort of like self aware, right? He knows he's a kid, he knows he doesn't know everything. But he also knows that a pond's not an ocean. He's just like, we're just make believing, right? This is. Kid's a bit of a realist, and she's more into whatever she's into. He's like, it's just a pond. We're just make believing. And she's like, yeah, but no. Right? But when you mix it with that odd feeling I already have, it starts to build a kind of a way. Um, Now, I'll say here, but it applies for the whole book. His word choice, it's not overdone. It's not super flowery. It's not over. You wouldn't lay it down and say it was beautiful writing. It's nothing to write home about. Right? You won't think about the writing years from now. I think you'll think about the story, but you won't really remember the writing. It's effective. That's what he picks. I have no doubt that he could write prettier, right? More beautifully, so to speak. But I think he's picking specifically for the effect because there's a constant effect that's laid on you throughout the whole story. You feel it like the kid feels it without feeling like a kid because kids don't feel like kids either, right? So it's this perfect sort of washing in and out of the story and you the reader. Works really well. Now, what I will say now is a little bit of a warning. If you're kind of squeamish, maybe don't read this book. I'm not a horror fan, okay? I don't read horror books in general. They stick to me too much, right? It's not that I'm scared or I won't be able to go in the dark somewhere or to this effect. It's just I commit really much to a book, whatever book I'm reading. I'll really sink into whatever the author gives. What do we call it? Verisimilitude. Whatever his thing he's creating, I'll dive headfirst into that and only breathe that water. So when it's a sort of a scary psychological kind of thriller book, whatever unhinges our protagonist, I'll let myself be unhinged with it. It's not fun after the fact, right? I don't like it. So I avoid them when I can, and I might have avoided this one had I known. But I didn't know. I'm just telling you that because it's coming. They find a dead fish in the pond, which concerns the girl, which then starts to concern me. Um, there's a shilling in his mouth, and I don't know if this has some kind of. I think you could take it right, like some sort of moral higher thing, some kind of what is it? A fish came out of the mouth. There's a story, a thing in the Bible where Jesus says, "Get that fish," and there's a coin in its mouth, right? Sort of, sort of scratched that memory in my mind. So I wonder if he had something of that in mind, where now instead of it being a gold coin and a good thing, it's a silver shilling and maybe less of a good thing, right? Because our person, our Letty, is concerned about it. She says mostly fish don't die. Hold on. He asks a lot of questions of these hemp stocks, be it Letty, the mom, or the grandmother, and they don't answer him. Right? They'll give him an answer, but then when he wants more explanation, they don't give it. They just sort of look at him. Now, in other books, this is annoying. Is an annoyance, right? I want to know what's happening. I don't like having questions unanswered. But in this book, it somehow doesn't feel annoying. Again, it makes you feel more like the 7-year-old, or like a 7-year-old would feel. You're not entitled to answers. And they say it not in the sense because kids are perceptive, right? If you were a douchebag, the kid's inner monologue would say, "That's a douchebag who just didn't want to tell me." They are aware of things. But he doesn't give me that. Because what comes off is the hempstocks feel like people full of knowledge who know an explanation won't be understood anyway. So why waste everyone's time? It's that kind of thing, right? If I really know my subject, I can know if someone's not going to know it, even if I tell them, right? You tell me physics, you know, theoretical physics till I'm blue in the face, and maybe I'm just like, not making any sense, right? Because at some point, you need all of that time to get it. That's the sense that I get from this. So again, it does a great job with the first person in that sense. We then have where she's looking at the coin. I think the old lady's looking at the coin. And she says it's not actually from 1912 or 1919, whatever age it was. She says you look at the neutrons and electrons, and then the shape of the face isn't worn right. And he's like, "You got really good eyesight." And she's like, "Yeah, not as good as it used to be." But I'm like, to use sort of scientific terms to describe fantastical things, it's just weird. It's this interesting blend I don't think I've ever really seen other people do so effectively, because it's casual in the story. The kid doesn't overblow it in his mind, but me, the reader, I take it for more than right. I'm picking up more than is there on purpose. No, I knew it was going to happen though. I have no one to blame but myself. I have fancier ones. I have fancier pencils. So why I don't hold them while I'm doing these videos, because I don't want to break this bad boy. Same with the metal one, right? But it'll just bend. Hold these sort of disposables. You know what though? It never happens on the stupid cheap ones, right? What is it? When it's these little Bics, I never break that bad boy. These little Bics are indestructible. It's on your slightly more fancy pens that you'll damage everything. Crying shame. In any case, the neutrons. I thought it was genius. It's subtle. This use of science in sort of a fantasy element, because you can't see down to the neutrons of a coin, but I already am getting a sense of something extra normal, right? There's something extra about these people. Something extraordinary about these people. And it just starts to feed that. Now, I mentioned the horror, but I don't feel it yet when I'm reading. Just FYI. I was just trying to give people a head warning. The hempstock girl, the Letty, has some sense that something's not right about these coins. This coin, I think some got chucked at the sister. Some issues going on. She wants to handle it. And they say something is coming and doing this. It's trying to help, but it doesn't know how to help, and it shouldn't be over here anyway. And she wants to take him with her. Excuse me. Letty, wants to take the boy with her. She says it'll be an adventure. The mom seems to think You will need him there because it's his coin. And the grandma's like, don't take him. It could be problems. And she's like, I want to. And she's like, fine, but don't cry to me if things get squirrely. Again, another sense of danger, death, danger, starting to build in my head. She says to hold my hand and don't let it go, which we all know means at some point he's letting his hand go. They walk around like with one of these sort of goofy dowel rods or whatever she made out of a stick. I love when we do this too, because we just walking in a particular way, and we left reality into some kind of a fantasy world. The sky is orange. The plants are spiky and they don't look like anything he's seen before. I love when we can just go from normal life and just take a turn around a pond or through a fog or up a particular tree and end up inside the tree. I love when with the fantasy world's just right next to our world. And then you could just get there if you just sort of knew the direction to take, right? Or the ancient stone to walk past and touch 3 times. I love that. They come up against some kind of a creature. I don't know. I'm going to say I didn't get the greatest visual on the creature, but I don't think it was about the visual because I got a good sensation from it. It's a kind of a ragged canvas witch flying in the air thing, right? And the lady's trying to tell it what time it is, and it doesn't want to listen. And at some point, it chucks like a ball of this rags towards the girl. And our boy lets go of her hand, catches it before it hits her. And it sort of is hot on his hand, and something hurts his foot. And she's like, put that down. She grabs his hand again. They finish what they got to finish. We think everything's fine, right? But we all know everything's not fine. You let go of her hand. He gets home, and this is the part. I wasn't a fan of this at all. Personally, for the story, it worked marvelously in a lot of different ways. He gets home, and he finds a hole in his foot. I'm already uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable talking about it. There's a hole in his foot. Oh my God. And there's something in the hole. And I can't imagine. This is how he describes it. Very simple, maybe a few words, but that they're so impactful. You don't have to, I guess you don't need all the guts and the goo or whatever. Just something simple. Just a hole in your foot. And I'm like, I'm uncomfortable. I'm not happy. But I'm too deep in now, right? He gets some tweezers because he saw something in it that when he tried to grab it, of course, went in the hole. Ugh. He reaches the tweezers in and then he starts pulling out some kind of a worm. I know. I'm with you. Not having fun, not enjoying myself, which again is, I think, the whole point. The whole point. You're supposed to be, your stomach's upended a little bit. And you know what's funny? I'm not that squeamish. I think if I had a hole in my actual foot with a worm in it, I'd be less bothered than reading about a hole in someone's foot with a worm in it. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's how I am. I'd be fine. I could look at it. I'm like, I don't want it there, obviously. We're going to have to go to the doctor or handle this in some way. But it wouldn't bug me as much as reading about it for some reason. It's so wrong. He's taken a big length of the worm out of his foot. He uses some hot water or something to coax it out, and he starts to pull on it. He gets excited once he thinks it's almost done, and of course snaps it. So some of the worm stayed in, but the hole got a little smaller. He sends the rest of the worm down the sink because that handles things. Nothing down the sink comes back up. Spoken like a 7-year-old. And I'm already not happy. And I'm like, this turned into a horror book. And I didn't know it. I don't know when it did this. but I'm trapped like a rat. Hold on. All right. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. The next day, like I already know things are bad. So the next day when a new tenant comes and her name's Ursula, it's Ursula Monkton. Monkton. He says it like that every time. Ursula Monkton. Ursula Monkton. Uses both first and last names. Again, offsetting. It's playing on the horror element already rolling in my mind. Um, it gives it a stateliness or something, which is also just more terror inducing. When you're evil isn't just ravenous, when it has a brain, when it has thoughts, motivations, it's scarier. It's a thing you'll have to deal with. You can't just run from Cujo, right? You don't just hide, you don't lock it up. It'll pick the lock, it'll get out, it'll find you. Um it's clearly we're with the kid on this. We already know she bad news. She's something about he says there's a paleness to her or grayness about her. He doesn't like her instantly. I don't like her instantly. Everyone else in the family likes her, obviously. Um, she makes food and he refuses to eat it, which I think there's some kind of again like a fairy tale element to this. Your Hansel and Gretel, right? They ate the food and got trapped or almost trapped. It's Eve and the apple. You ate the forbidden fruit. Something about eating. I think there was a thing in what's the movie Spirited Away? Same sort of element where you get got on the food, so that he makes a point not to eat the food. It's a great subtle element there. I really like. Again, all of his things he's not taking too much time to explain it. He wants you to feel it more, and you do feel it. So you do feel that you don't want to eat this lady's food, and that everyone else is eating and sort of getting under her spell. She won't let him leave. She straight up says, "You don't get to leave the farm." She says, "I've been inside you. I'll know what you're thinking. Don't try and leave." He'll run this way, and she'll be ahead of him when she was behind him. All the horrible mystical ghost stuff that ghost mysticism can do. She got it right there. Um, if there's a point here where he says, the narrator, mind you, he goes, "I would have reacted differently now, but I was 7 then." Again, great use of first person narration. Like I said, it started slow, but once he gets going, he's not dropping the ball anywhere. Because memories stay with you, right? You have an idea of what happened when you were 7. You could retell a story. You would tell it some with the effect of it had on you, but you wouldn't lose that you're current now and you're an adult, right? It adds to the realism for me because at some point you might go, Did the 7-year-old sit down and write a journal? Did he write all this down? Just at the moment you might start thinking that. He placates you as a reader. It's very wonderfully done. Now we're just 2 days in. Now the kid hasn't eaten any of her food. He steals fruit, and at some point she makes meatloaf and mashed potatoes. Sounds great. Apparently it's his favorite. Of course she knew that, but he didn't want to eat it. He didn't want to eat a bite, and the dad sort of urging him on a little bit, like, "Go ahead, eat it. Eat it. Just eat a bite. Just taste it. Don't be rude." Right? This aggressiveness that's not normal. You could tell. You feel her pushing the family against this kid. It's terrifying. And he makes a point to say that his dad's dad was violent and would hit him, but his dad would never hit him. I'm like, this isn't gonna go well. So when he says like, "Why won't you eat the food?" Right? He just sort of lays it down there. The kid just answers because he's a 7-year-old. He's like, "She's a monster. She's a monster and you're all under her spell. And he's like, you're gonna eat the food now, and you're gonna apologize to Ursula Monkton. And the kid's like, I ain't gonna apologize, and I ain't gonna eat the food. He makes a full-on stand, but when you're 7, you don't put your chest out and just say it, right? So he makes his stand and runs to the bathroom, which is the only locked door. And the dad's pounding on the door, like, you gonna open this door? And the kid's like, no, I'm not opening it. And he's 7, so he's like, no one can open it. The door's locked. Unless he kicks it down, he's not going to do that. That's what he does. Blast this. He said the door explodes in. He blasts the door down, starts filling up the tub. Then he gets this kid and just shoves him under the water because he was not going to hit him, but he's enraged. His face is all twisted with rage from what this Ursula. It's the Ursula doing it, but it's just it's more horrifying to read, I think, than I think it was for the kid to experience. Because when you're in a situation like that, you're not taking it like my father's trying to kill me. You just take it like I'm in a situation. I don't want to die. He's starting to get drowned. I think he grabs the dad's tie and starts pulling him in or choking it. Kind of breaks the spell for a second. Dad doesn't apologize. He just doesn't try and drown him again. And he sends him to his room, right? Now the kid is taking it like it was Ursula doing it. In the back of his mind, he knows it's not his dad. But it was his dad who tried to drown him, right? It's just the intensity just ratchets up on this story. Because you're feeling it like a 7-year-old. Ursula come in and give him what time it is again, but he's like, I got to get out of here. I got to make it down to the farm, to Letty's farm. They'll know what to do. This is a problem. He understands this. So he pretends to go to sleep. Then he gets up and... Hold on. He tries to sneak out the window, but he keeps a mantra in his mind of, I'm in bed, I'm in bed, I'm in bed. It's, again, very smart. Smart kid. If you're in my head and you know my thoughts, I'll just control my thoughts, right? Parents might not have done better. And then he describes the dad having an affair, but from a 7-year-old. So there's nothing gratuitous there. If you're like, I don't want to read about sexy time, don't worry about it. It's not in there. It's all 100% PG. But you as an adult reader understand what's happening. Not good. I mean, in 2 days, you're already cheating on your wife with Ursula Monkton? With the monster, bro? Come on, get it together. In any case, it allows the kid to escape. And he's running down the road. But then he's like, they might follow me on the road. So he gets off the beaten track. And he's starting to get lost, obviously. Then Ursula catches up to him. And then she's now between, right? So she still has the body of a human, but she's floating in the air, and her dress is moving. It says that, right, because she was just having an affair with the dad, so the shirt's off, the bra on, and the dress is floaty, right? And I think, again, it's one of these offsetting elements. People don't walk around undressed or any kind of state of undress. So that in your head, then add that she's floating, and then add that, I guess lightning's crackling off of her, or it's this odd, unsettling thing floating in the air, terrorizing this kid, right? He paints the picture, it's a storm with no wind and lightning, and this lady's floating in the air, and it's kind of a wild scene. It's very wild. But he ends up being saved by Letty. Of course, we knew this was coming. And he's on the farm and he's happy again. He's eating more good food. He'll eat their food. He won't eat Ursula Monkton's food, right? But then they're worried. He's worried, I don't want to go back home. He just flat tell them, I don't want to. They're going to kill me, bro. Right now, I think an adult would be more panicked at that. Be like, you got to find the authorities. You can't send me back into that house. I'll die. The kids, concerned about it, but it reads, again, because of the Neil Gaiman's writing, it reads in a sense that he knows that decision's out of his hands. He goes, I'm 7. I'm not an adult. If the adults say I got to go back home, I'm going back home. So he doesn't, it's not pleading. He's not desperate. But he is highly concerned. It's great, great writing. They come up with the idea of a snip and cut, which again, it's a great when you get into fantasy stuff, right? Magical realms, this kind of thing. How an author describes it tells you a lot. Some get up to the magic and leave it, right? I don't want to go too into it. Explanation will kill it. Works, but it's sort of like when a painter doesn't show hands. No hands, right? Why? Hands are stupid hard. Hands are stupid hard. I think Rembrandt charged by how many pairs of hands he would have. You do a hand, and then the sleeve's all dark. No one cares about the sleeve. That hand is super hard. We're used to seeing them. Hands and faces, what we're used to. So if an author is willing to go describe fantastical things, I give them tremendous credit. And then even more credit if they stick the landing, which Neil Gaiman does. He described, a bunch of these fantasy elements. The snip and the cut is a magical element where they somehow cut him out of time, sew him together in a way that they want. So instead of he ran away from home and his parents are scared, with Grandma's ability, she cut him the edges just right, sewed it all together, and just needed in their mind what his toothbrush looked like. He was able to he was able to imagine it better than describe it, which is all they needed, because again, they can read his thoughts or whatever. And so when the parents come, it's just, you forgot your toothbrush. That's where the urgency came from. It was never, you ran away from home and I'm scared, right? So they just leave them there for the night. The parents do. The parents have believed this magical spell. And again, into the memory thing. It comes up again. I'll describe it by the end, I think. And it relates to the sort of the chapters. But it's genius. I love this. It's no setup whatsoever. We go right into it. I understand what it is. I understand that it's magic. It doesn't hurt the story at all. It only helps. It's not adding an element that could solve the problem, but then just doesn't for no reason. It's very, very creative writing. Unafraid. It's unafraid of delving into these sort of elements and working them out. We then have, again, another of these that I like. Because they're talking about Ursula, and they're like, we can't leave her. It'll end up like Cromwell's day. And if you don't know Oliver Cromwell, then the name Cromwell just feels like everything else. It's something from their ancient knowledge. These people are somehow, they're older than normal. They have abilities that aren't normal. So with all their age and all their extraordinary ability, Cromwell was an issue. It's all you need to know, and it works in the story. But if you do know history, right? And you know that Oliver Cromwell was this big thing in England, that he led a rebellion. He did a lot of good stuff, mind you. I'm not gonna hate too much on the guy. He led a rebellion and chopped a king's head off, right? It was the first time the common people had killed a king in England. Mind you, the king was a douche. It's a whole other story. I gotta find it in a book somewhere so we can talk about it. If you haven't read it, go. I'm trying to think I'm trying to think where I read it. I can't remember the name of the book. I think I can find it in the research. I should put a picture up because I read a history and it's in the history. This king was a douche. It was so funny. He was just egging. He was just, what did we say? Cruising for a bruising. In any case, Cromwell's time was very turbulent, and to think that it was a Ursula Monkton type of a spirit They just messed with everyone's head in England that made this thing happen. It's a great because it's a great story. It's a great writing tool, I would say. You tugged on a little string that opened up this world of memories without having to explain all of it. It just shoves it right in the story for me. It's absolutely genius. It's absolutely genius. They fix his foot. They get the rest of the worm out. They fix his foot. Now they go to confront Ursula, the girl, Letty, and our guy, our kid, 7-year-old. And now they say she's stark naked, just sitting on the bed with all these rags around her. And again, from a 7-year-old's point of view, he's aware, like, I'm not supposed to see naked people, adults especially. But he's also aware that Ursula's just a monster. And he sees all these rags, and he just leaves that for a second. He's like, I'm not going to worry about the naked. I'm concerned with this monster not killing me. Right? Focus. He's focused. And that's the sense you get. You don't get any other kind of sense with it. Just this off-putting nature of people. And clothes. Right? Same as the hole in the foot. It just sets you off weird. You're not supposed to be naked. You're not supposed to have a hole in your foot. Genius elements. Now, Letty's telling her, just give in, go back home, and I'll find a spot for you. Otherwise, I'll call them. She says it a bunch of times. Them end up being void vultures, if you can describe it like that. There's a big, long description about it. I'm not going to do that. It's essentially what they are. Wonderfully described, though. And you would think, well, if it's wonderfully described, why can't you describe it? Right? And it's, again, part of the story. Even the kid says, I saw him clearly, and the moment I looked away, it's like a memory. They're this fantastical thing. The shadow alive, or something like this. It's this element that's affecting you. And that the effect is real when you're reading it. But it does no point for me to just say it devoid of the rest of the story. They're essentially, though, void vultures. Again, they're another genius idea from our Neil Gaiman as well. You have different dimensions and creatures that handle the waste of dimensions or whatever. I mean, it's your brain just runs off with the idea while the story's going, and then you're pulled back in the story. It's genius writing. She tries to go back home once she sees him, and then turns out she's like, the tunnel's incomplete because I put half the tunnel in his heart. So I need his heart. So he wants to tear his heart out to finish the tunnel to get out away from the void vultures. And the lady's like, I'm not going to let you do that. Just go in the tunnel and I'll figure it out. She's like, no, you can't. So she spazzes out. The vultures just attack her. Rip her apart. Right? Now, he's describing like a person getting ripped apart. But it only sounds like canvas ripping. And she's screaming, and it's just this canvas monster that's dying. There's no blood or anything. It's kind of wild. Again, more credit to our author for not just banishing a ghost or whatever this is, but to give it a realism, right? It's this. I've had canvas in my hand. I can imagine how it feels or hears when it rips. A real sound to describe the not real event. Fantastical, I mean. Not real. The vultures then sense the rest of the tunnel in his heart, and they're like, I need that kid's heart. This is my job. I'm going to finish my job. I eat the wrong and leave everything right. And Letty's like, you can't have the heart. And she leaves him in she gets him somewhere safe. Right? There's other elements I'm leaving out. They're just fun to read. Go read it. She ends up getting him somewhere safe. Trying to convince the vultures to leave. And they're like, I'm not leaving. She's like, well, you can't do anything because you're on my land is secure. And the vultures are like, well, your land is, but everything else isn't. And he describes them starting to eat the entire world. Like there's a tree and they eat it, but it's not like, he describes it like the tree's gone, and in its place is a void where, like, if you look out around you, that imagine that's a picture. And if somebody tore some of it out, then instead of seeing the room next door or what's outside, you see void, darkness, black, a nothingness, right? They just start eating the world around them. Constellations out of the sky. A fox got eaten, and behind it's the void, right? They're just going to eat the whole world. And the kid, I'm getting mad credit to the kid. He's aware. He's like, they're going to eat everything. They're going to eat the whole world. I messed up. I shouldn't have let go of her hand. I brought this evil in. It's my fault. And he doesn't want to die. But he's like, it's not worth it for the whole world to go away. And he drops her hand again on purpose this time and just runs to where they can get him. And he just has a vague memory of them being on him in pain, and then the girl jumping on top of him, and then she's getting hacked apart. And then I think the grandmother comes. I believe it's the grandmother. I should have wrote this down to be sure. Yeah, the grandma comes, but she's not old lady grandma anymore. She's the picture I got in my head was like a Galadriel, right? Like an elf, young, regal, authoritative. And she lays down the law and sends them all. She makes them fix the world before they leave. They didn't have a right. What she says is, you had a right to the kid, but you don't have a right to my people, and you've hurt my people, and I'll deal with you later. Right? It's very wild. And we have some kind of a situation where they let Letty off in the ocean, which is her pond, which is also an ocean. And they're sad, but she's not dead. What did the lady say? She goes, what are they called? I forgot the name. She goes, a hemp stalk would never do anything so common as dying. I mean, that's kind of wild. And then he starts to remember it. Hold on. I think it sort of ends there, and they have an epilogue. Now, I don't normally read epilogues, but I read this one because I'm like, I want to see what else is there. The epilogue has it where, the same sort of snip cut memory change that happened to the parents. The kid's like, I don't want to forget. So in a sense, they're having him remember in spurts, because he didn't want to forget. If he wanted to forget, I think they would have set it up so that he doesn't remember at all. But they're like, Lady didn't make the sacrifice she made, so you'd live every day just thinking about it. So they have him forget because it's easier. And that's where we get this great description of half memories, right? You get this, I think, they never say it, but I think the dad dies. It's 40 years later. The dad dies, so he's going back to the farm. He's drawn to that farm again. And Lady's still not back, but she's still not dead. He's seeing them like where he saw the lady is really, grandma still looks like grandma, but the lady just seems like a 30-year-old lady, so younger than him now. But she still feels like the adult she felt like, right? He's getting this weird mix. Like when you go back to, if you ever go back to your elementary school, I have the feeling I had as a kid, but I'm an adult as well. This weird mix starts happening in you. And as they go, from the conversation they have, you get a sense that they're making him even remember what happened different. I think what happened is those vultures ate his heart out. And then he was dead. And then Letty gave him some piece of her to fix the heart, which damaged her. So then she had to go into the spirit realm situation. And it's going to take however long that takes for her to come back. And even he in the conversation is like, I don't remember it that way. But once we have this conversation, it knits together the rest of that story because even like I said, the chapter names don't have. There's no chapter name. It's just this spot, this emptiness, and that you realize the whole story was that the whole time. It's what he can remember as best as he can remember it, and that even he's under their spell a little bit. Now they're being nice to him because you get the sense that he's come back a bunch over the years as things have happened in his life, and that some part of Letty can see that he's growing. But then they don't because they go. He goes, "I'm gonna forget again, aren't I?" And the old lady goes, "It's easier that way, right?" So it's for his benefit, but out of respect to him, they allow him to remember enough so that he doesn't forget and that he will come back. And it's also for Letty's benefit because she was a kid of the Hempstocks. And I think the old lady even says, she shouldn't have taken you, but she'll know better for next time, right? Time, space, reality, dimensions, they play on a different scale for these people. Now, none of this is said, but the conversation's in such a way that your mind gets thrown out to all these other places. It's absolutely genius writing. Genius. It's so subtle. If you were a kid and read this, you would just take it the way a kid should. But when you reread it as an adult or read it for the first time as an adult, there's all these other deeper elements that happen. It's a wonderful, wonderfully fantastic book. And again, I think he just baited me. I think he could have started at any pace he wanted to. He just purposely started slow to lull me in so that when that hole in the foot horror starts, I'll be offset, but I'm already on the ride, right? Perfectly crafted book. Wonderful. Wonderful book. I had in my notes the nature of the ocean. I don't think I'm going to go into that. I don't think I should go into it. I'll just say if you read this book, I'm not going to go into it. Again, when you read that part about the ocean, testament, a tip of the hat to his, let's say, fearlessness as a writer, to grab big, vague concepts and try and make them real for the reader. Wonderful. He's a wonderful writer. Okay, how long was this? I have no idea because I stopped the video, but I think it's long enough. I think I covered it. I hope I gave him enough credit. Ad time. Y'all know what it is. Y'all know about my books, my author page there. Y'all want to go read them. Or if not, get this Kindle Unlimited. And well, I gotta assume this could be read in the future watched in the future as well. So it might not be on Unlimited when you get it. Just remember the name of this book. And if you're inclined to buy it full price, I wouldn't have a problem with that. But if you see it on sale, maybe snag that bad boy. Neil Gaiman can actually write, people. Mad credit to him. All right. Thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your time. Hope I didn't waste it. Hope you had fun. I'm having plenty of fun. And I'll see everyone next week.